despite the fact that Frank is the one who looks a little bit like Santa Claus, I think you're the real Santa Claus behind this operation. You got it started, 5 years ago now, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about how it started and why you did it.
Sure. Well, it's really awesome to be here, and I just want to start off by thanking everyone in the community who's put so much effort towards making the designs and contributing so much work towards improving the overall efficiency of the internet and all of the services that we build. So thank you guys all. It's kind of funny to think back to the first one of these summits where I think it was in Facebook's cafeteria, and we needed to do it between lunch and dinner, so that way our employees could go eat when it was lunch and dinner time as well. So throughout the first Open Compute Summit, you could kind of hear people cooking and shuffling around dishes in the background. So we've come a long way to here, and it's very exciting to be here.
Different kind of power consumption going on there, right?
So yeah, in terms of why we're interested in this, Facebook has always really been a systems company. Even from the very early days when I was in college and when I was taking computer science classes, they were systems classes, and a lot of the work that we did early on was with open source and building systems, and a lot of the earlier social networks had difficulty scaling, and we took those challenges really seriously as a company. I think that's part of the reason why early on we were able to develop and deliver such a fast and efficient service. And as time has gone on and we grew and got to a bigger scale, we're always just looking for ways to do things more efficiently. And that's how we started thinking about designing our own hardware as well as all the software and systems that we use. And
but you weren't the first ones to design your own hardware. Google was famous for doing that years ago. Amazon's done a lot in that area, but you guys did something that they didn't do, which is you opened it up and said, hey, come on in, come to the party, let's figure out how to do this together better. We've made some real innovations, but we believe in the power of a community to build on that. So what made you decide to do that?
Well, there were a bunch of pieces to this. Just from an idealism perspective, we want to bring the technology and innovation that we're designing to the world. And one of the things that we're really proud of is that in addition to all the contributions that we're making leading to greater efficiency and saving money, in the last 3 years alone, Facebook has saved more than $1 billion in building out our infrastructure using open compute designs. On top of that, we've also saved a lot in terms of the energy consumption and emissions. So, just the last year, we've saved the equivalent amount of energy of 40,000 homes in a year, and save the amount of emissions equivalent to taking 50,000 cars off the road for a year. So those are things that we think are awesome, and if we can help bring those kind of savings and that kind of efficiency to other companies as well, then that's great, and we're really proud of that.
Yeah.
There's also this practical piece, which is what you're talking about, which is, when you're the first company to design something, sometimes there's an advantage to keeping it proprietary and secret. But when there are other companies that had done some of this work, especially when we were getting started, then from our perspective, it was just much better to collaborate with the community and work together to do something that could blow past what anyone else had done. And that was kind of a no-brainer of a practical strategy that we wanted to execute. And I think now to this point, we're I think quite far ahead of.
Well, I think that's really been the story for open source all along. That in fact it's this incredibly efficient way of doing industry leapfrog, where you can build on the work of others. But a lot of people thought that it wouldn't work for hardware, and there certainly are challenges still on the hardware side. You don't have all the things you take for granted as a software developer around version control, around all the ways that we, over the last 25, 30 years, we've learned to share software designs. It was kind of a bold move. What made you kind of think you could pull it off?
Well, I do think that folks are heavily incentivized. People are spending so much money on building out infrastructure that if you can save the amount of money or the amount of efficiency that we're seeing, then I think that creates a pretty broad incentive for a lot of folks to want to participate. We've also Facebook is a partnership company. We're a social company, and a lot of what our product does is just help bring people together. And a lot of what we've tried to do in our corporate strategy is form partnerships with folks rather than trying to do everything ourselves. From a product level, we've always had this view that there are going to be way more social products than what we can build ourselves. So we've tried to build a platform and make partnerships that other folks can do those as well. And with Open Compute, it just seemed like we should try to do this on the hardware side. And now with the success of Open Compute, we're also using this kind of a model for another really big initiative that we have now, Internet.org, which is our goal to try to bring affordable or even free basic internet services to everyone in the world. And I mean, that's I think, a really big deal for us and for the world at this point. And we, for the last 5 or 6 years, our big rallying cry inside the company was, can we help connect 1 billion people? And then we reached that milestone. So then it was time for us to take a step back and think about, okay, well, what's the next big thing that we want to go do? And yeah, we're going to help try to connect 1.1 and 1.2 and 1.3 billion people. But the real challenge is to try to build out a network that can help connect everyone over time.
So for people who don't necessarily know all the details of Internet.org, what are you actually doing to accelerate into that next 5 billion that isn't happening naturally as a result of just increased market penetration?
Well, the important thing to kind of understand about this, I think, is that people have talked about for a long time how there are 5 billion mobile phones in the world. Over the next 5 or 7 or whatever number of years your prediction is that those will primarily become smartphones, even if they're low-end smartphones. But I think the thing that people really underestimate is that having a smartphone doesn't mean that you're actually connected. Right, because the expensive part about owning a smartphone that's connected to the internet is the internet and the network and the data, not the actual smartphone, right? I mean, if you own an iPhone, for example, it's $2,000 for 2 years and about $500 of that is the phone, right? So the network and the data access costs 3 times as much. So basically, the approach that we're taking is use an open compute style partnership and industry coalition to try to make the network components that are necessary and all of the infrastructure costs, licensing spectrum, all of the different things that go into delivering the internet cheaper, so that way you can bring the cost down of what you're delivering to consumers. And then we're also trying to use the position that we have in the industry as by far the largest mobile service that people use, especially in the developing world, to help work with carriers to craft a business model where they can offer basic services, things that are text-based, like email or messaging or weather access or food prices or search or Wikipedia, or kind of basic types of services, or basic social networking for free for folks, so that people can get exposure to more things on the internet and then end up getting access to the internet and buying more access through that. So we think that there's a model here that's going to make a lot of sense and that will end up getting more people on the internet. And a bunch of our early tests are very positive on this as well.
So I'm kind of hearing a strategic thread here. In the case of Open Compute, it's saying, okay, we're going to be using more and more server capacity over time. We better make it cheap and efficient, right? And we can use Open for that. Oh, wait, in the rest of the world, we need to actually bring down the data usage, the bandwidth usage, all the kinds of things that will make this more affordable. So you're kind of looking ahead at the the future expansion of the internet and where it's going, the mobile world where it's going, saying what interventions do we need to do to make it more efficient for when it's 10 times the size or 100 times the size that it is today? Is that a fair,
or
fair
even just the bottleneck to, right now only 1/3 of people in the world have any access to the internet at all. Right, and most of that, or maybe not most, but a lot of that is not even what you'd consider really internet access. It's folks who maybe pay for a day of data access here and there, but otherwise are kind of trying to find free Wi-Fi hotspots where they can download their content and then turn off their data access so that they can save money throughout the day. That's 1/3 of the world. 2/3 of the world actually has no access to or can't afford or doesn't understand why they would want to spend the income that they have on getting access to that. And the trick to that isn't making cheaper cell phones, although that's really important too. It's making the network costs lower. So the hardware and all the other parts of delivering the network, it's not just the network infrastructure and hardware, but also things like making spectrum easier and cheaper to get are really important. And if you could bring down the cost of that by 10x, then, which I think we can over time, then I think you can make a really big deal. So that's kind of that's the Internet.org plan, and Open Compute I think plays a really big role in this on the both on the server and data center and switch side of things. But if we can bring the network cost down by 10x and we can make some of the basic services consume 10x less data, which I think is also possible because that is something that hasn't been very well optimized today, and we can help some of the carriers in developing worlds implement some new business models that will help folks get on the internet while increasing their profits over time, then I actually think it's possible to expand the portion of the world that's going to be on the internet from 1/3 to I don't know, at least 2/3 or more in the coming years.
So in your white paper on internet.org, you talked about the shift to the knowledge economy and how that was an important part of this economic shift worldwide. How do you sort of connect that with Facebook's business today, which is really, is much more social engagement, people in their non-work time rather than, kind of a knowledge economy play, and yet you've characterized internet.org as accelerating the move to the knowledge economy. How does that play with Facebook's business?
Well, the definition of the knowledge economy is really people having access to information and using it to make decisions, right, and ultimately do work. But I actually think the lines between work and what isn't work are blurring a lot, and a lot of the time we're learning and connecting and creating relationships and forming opinions when we're not working as well. So that I think can be quite important. A lot of the work that we're doing as well is on the advertising side to try to bring all the same kind of tools to small businesses and smaller developers that historically have only been available to really large companies that can do analysis on their customer bases, right, to figure out what kind of ads they should run or how they should do promotions. And if you could bring those same tools to the local bakery or the barber, or make it so that small developers, the next set of folks who are in their dorm room trying to build a business can grow their app faster and know more about the people who are using their app and build more personalized experiences, then that's awesome, right? And that's a lot of what I think we're trying to do, and is one kind of small step in helping to build this knowledge economy.
Yeah, there's certainly an argument to be made that a lot of the ad targeting technology could be used for relevant information targeting, just information finding you.
Yeah, but I mean, historically, a lot of the pre-knowledge economy, I think, is, there are a lot of folks who are doing jobs where information, if you're a barber, for example, right, you're not necessarily using a lot of analytics and information on a day-to-day basis to do your job better. But I actually think in the future, that'll just be baked into how folks do business. It hasn't been scalable for a large portion of the world's population to make decisions and interface with their customers in that way, but I think it will be through a combination of the tools that we're building and other folks are building, and just generally what the internet is doing.
Well, I think just in general, thinking about the knowledge economy very, very broadly, you think about how a service like Uber is adding information to a very old school, physical world business and making it super, much more efficient, much more social, this reputation in there, and you think, well, what other services are there in the future that could benefit? And I guess, do you think at all about, Facebook as a social operating system for, the Internet of Things applications? Is that too far out?
Well, I mean, our goal is, operating system is tricky because it tends to imply an environment for running applications and executing code, which is not what we are, right? Yeah. What we do is, there's identity aspects and social aspects, and we try to make it so that any service can, easily enable a person to bring their friends and their content and have a personalized experience in anything they want to do, which absolutely should almost automatically extend to wearables. And I'm sure that they're going to be, or Internet of Things. And there's a lot of things that we're going to end up doing there to make that even better, but there's more that we can do.
Yeah.
I think, though, that when you're thinking about the knowledge economy broadly, there's the developed world where there are going to be really nuanced and rich services that get developed, like what you're talking about, that just don't exist yet. Things like Uber, to make it so that a lot of services that people have had forever can be more efficient. But as big of an opportunity that I'm really excited about are that you have all these folks who aren't on the internet at all yet, and 3-4 billion people who don't have really much access to basic social services at all, right? So I mean, if you don't have the internet, that probably correlates pretty highly with not having access to, banking or credit to go buy a home or start a business.
Yeah.
It probably correlates pretty highly to not having good healthcare or even information so that you can understand what is happening to you and your family, and kind of without even access to medicine, have basic knowledge about what how you can take care of your family better, things like education. So I think that bringing the cost of the overall network down and delivering the internet to more people will have very profound impact on the overall world in those ways as well.
One of the things that comes to mind as I hear you talking, it kind of rings one of my chimes, is we have this thing that some people call the shareholder value myth, that the only obligation of a company is to make money for its shareholders. And clearly, you're doing a bunch of things that are driven by a kind of idealism here. And what do you think is the responsibility of a company? Do we have to be rethinking the capitalist system? Is it okay for companies to just say, oh yeah, wow, I was thinking about the financial crisis back in 2008, a bunch of companies go, feeding at the trough, wrecking everything for everybody else, and you're sitting here going, we got to invest in energy efficiency because that really matters. We got to think about the future of the knowledge economy in developing countries. Should every CEO be thinking like that?
I mean,
I think so.
We're lucky. I think ideally, I think more folks would take longer term views, but I also think it's, there aren't that many companies in the world that have the resources and the reach that Facebook has at this point, and I think that means that we have more of a responsibility to do more of that kind of work. But it's a really tricky thing. I mean, I remember we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. I think it's next week actually, or maybe the week after. But it's February 4th, and so I've just been reflecting a lot on the first 10 years of Facebook, and one of the things that I remember from really early on, I had one of my friends who I used to do most of my computer science problem sets with when I was in school, and now he works at Facebook and runs a bunch of our engineering team. And I remember right after releasing the first version of Facebook at Harvard, we had this conversation where it was like, all right, it's awesome that now there's this utility and community at our school, but clearly someday someone is going to build this for the world. And it didn't even occur to me that it could be us, right? And it wasn't even like, oh, maybe it'll be us, or hopefully it'll be us. It's like, no chance, right? It's like, of course it's going to be one of these other companies that's like a company and has all these engineers and all these servers and serves all these people. So one of the big things that I've just been reflecting on is like going backwards, why were we the ones to kind of do this part of the infrastructure? And I think the reason is just because we kind of cared more, right? And at each step along the way, we thought that helping people connect and building the service for people was like a right. It was something that people should have. We thought it was really good. And then you'd read the press or the blogs about us, and it would always be about how this was a fad, or it couldn't get to the next level, or even if it did, it wouldn't be profitable and it wouldn't be a business. So I actually think like a lot of this stuff has a lot of parallels to the work that we're doing with Internet.org today. Because there's no real business plan that supports the billions of dollars of investment that we're going to make in trying to bring connectivity to the rest of the world. But we're doing it because we think it's the right thing to do, and I think that tends to have a good way of catching up in a positive way to you over time. And I don't know. I think a lot of times the best things that people do, it's like you're doing it because you're passionate about it before there's a clear business case. But if you're doing something good, a lot of the time there is a way to make a profit off of it later on, whether it's 10 or 20 years later. So I don't know. It's one of the tricky things about capitalism. Is you can't connect all the dots ahead of time.
No, I think that's super. And in a lot of ways, that's a great place to end. I think I still remember the first time I met you. I spent a lot of time with a lot of internet entrepreneurs, and some people are the real deal and some people aren't. And I remember thinking, wow, Mark's the real deal. I have this memory of what they said about Michelangelo, who used to basically chip away at the stone, finding the statue inside the stone. And I had that sense of, you have this problem you're chewing on, and you're kind of chipping away at things until you see the pattern that you're trying to uncover. And when you first started thinking about this sort of social layer, I think you know, it was an idea that you thought could be a big idea, but it's gotten bigger as you've kind of uncovered more and more of the pattern. And it's super exciting to watch you do that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you guys.
And thank you guys.